I just recorded 40 minutes of video and then I found out my mic was muted, so fuck my life, right? Alright. In short, the purpose of this video is to serve as a follow-up in reference to my World's Group Stage predictions. I'll link those below. Now, this video won't cover all of the groups, but specifically it will cover my reasoning as to why TSM won't leave groups. To briefly state why, before I give my examples, I feel as if TSM doesn't live up to the hype given by its region. A lot of the success in their games is piggybacked off of the lack of strength in specific areas of their opponents. These areas generally tend to be map pressure and understanding of game-to-game adaptation, as well as win conditions from both parties. It's been of fortunate nature that Team Solo Mid has had the luxury of getting handouts. But versus stronger international talent, I don't see this being a luxury that is sustained. Now, the clips I'm going to cover are from TSM's most recent games in the North American playoffs, and they not only highlight weaknesses of their opposition, but in turn demonstrate how TSM manages to get their cumulative map leads. Oftentimes, when pressured or challenged, these leads do disappear or go unanswered. This is what I expect to be the case when they do compete on the international stage this year. Now, to jump into the first clip, it's actually really important to notice what's happening right now. What's going to happen is when Afromu goes up to clear this ward, Svenskaren's actually going to come out to prevent the end clear of this pink ward, which gives CLG information that the jungler's bottom. Svenskaren's bottom. You know he's going to be pressuring bot side right now, so you either need to trade map pressure or answer the fact that there's a dragon up, or they might be moving to make a tower dive because Cassiopeia is also off of the map. So we play this out. He sees Sven. At this point, you know something's happening because Sven even pushed out past the tri-brush up into river. So now he's getting river control. They play this replay of what previously happened. And then what CLG do? They opt to pressure topside instead of answering bot side. When they decide to 3-man top, this is already a bad play. The reason why it's a bad play is because it's versus Gangplank, who doesn't come online until 30 minutes anyways, and it's common knowledge that it's perfectly okay for Gangplank to get behind in lane, or take a few deaths, or take a lot of map pressure from the enemy team, because he can trade that back later on in the game in the form of his ultimate, in form of scaling up. Once he gets to that 30-minute peak, he can really come online and start doing the damage he needs to do and be that type of hyper carry for his team for his retrospective lane. So this answer from CLG is actually not beneficial for them because they're not making the best of the situation. And this plays more into TSM's hands because now TSM, with the information that CLG's top, Svenskaren, who you know has a Tiamat right now with the Bomb Sender, is on Dragon. You go for the dive on a Gangplank who's going to scale up later into the game regardless. And instead you trade away Infernal Dragon to a team composition with a Gangplank, a Cassiopeia, and a Jhin. Arguably the 3 strongest Infernal Dragon abusers for their retrospective lanes. This is something that should not happen. I don't see this becoming a standard for teams to just hand away this kind of trade. Like, this is just very poor play from CLG. They should not have moved for that play on top side because giving this away was too much. But you know, CLG, they want to shut down this Gangplank, and this pulls me to the second clip, where now they've shown that they are full committed to this idea of getting Darshan ahead. Now, Darshan does have a kill, but it's not on the Gangplank, and the reason why this doesn't work is because CLG's composition isn't fitted to have Darshan be the carry. CLG's composition is built to have dual tanks and have a control mage and a healer, to have the healer outpace the DPS coming from Cassiopeia and Jhin, as well as use the double tank to have Sivir do AoE DPS to the entire enemy team, considering they have triple hyper carry. In this scenario, this is CLG's best opportunity to win, and instead they opt into this idea of, we're going to try to make Darshan the carry. Totally abandoning Stigsay. So again, we have a situation. CLG has to back off tower because they were unaware of what was happening. They saw Reksai drop drop control right here. Reksai peeks out, CLG has to back off, and we have CLG moving topside again. You have Huhi topside, you have Xsmithy topside, they're pressuring down on the tier 2, and this does nothing. They're going to knock out the tier 2. Okay, you're going to get gold. You opened up all of top lane. Now Gangplank has a multitude of options. Gangplank decides, okay, do I want to freeze? Do I want to just go bottom and we'll swap Double Lift and Biofrost to top lane to start pushing down their outer turret and maybe their inner turret? And besides that, what ends up happening here is, since there's only 2 left on CLG's half for the bot lane, they're forced to back off. So TSM get a tower trade. So in the end, this trade ends up going 1-for-1 in terms of just tower gold. And CLG's like, okay, but we're going to get Rift Herald. You put Rift Herald on Teir, but it doesn't matter. Because Gangplank is now at the point in the game, he's 17 minutes. He's been getting the majority of this farm. Like, he's at 126 CS. Gangplank doesn't need to be fighting Teir. Gangplank effectively, even if you get this Rift Herald onto the Teir, and you put all this pressure to get Teir this lead over Gangplank, this does nothing. And what it does do, because Gangplank ends up stalling out the tower originally with his Gangplank ult to buy the extra 30 seconds between the waves, so that way Dragon would spawn and TSM could get the Mountain Dragon. Which, with a composition when you have Gangplank, Cassiopeia, and Jhin, you're going to burn down neutral objectives super fast. You're going to burn down towers super fast. This is a really, really big net win for TSM. Now, the reason why, to jump back, the reason why getting Herald onto Teir, or Darshan in this case, isn't effective is because Gangplank doesn't have to fight him. He doesn't. Gangplank neutralizes that lane. He sets up barrels, one-shots the wave, never has to interact with Teir. So you putting all this pressure into knocking down these towers, getting Teir out of this lane, won't mean much in the scenario where GP just like, alright, throws down a barrel or 2, clears out the entire wave, shoves the waves back to you, and can just keep scaling. And this lead, and this Herald, and the advantage you have put onto the Teir ends up becoming nullified because Gangplank never has to interact with him. So again, more poor play from the opposition, not understanding what the win condition is or what they need to do to prevent this TSM team from coming online and being relevant, and instead really just handing over the keys to victory for them to be able to scale into a situation where they're comfortable winning the game. Now, this clip, for example, that I'm about to show, it's another testament to poor play from the opposition that makes TSM look really good. It's kind of just to pick on Xsmithy because this is the type of situation, this should never happen. So what happens, I'm gonna slow it down. Gragas goes for a body slam here, right here. Alright, he body slams. As soon as this body slam ends, you need to drop Explosive Cask. You need to drop explosive cask. You need to drop explosive cask. You see Bjergsen coming. You need to drop explosive cask. The body slam goes through. You get 1 second, maybe like 0.9 of time in between. And instead of dropping explosive cask, he goes for the drunken rage. What this does is it locks him into the animation for an extended period of time that he cannot afford to be locked into, because now his team's just going to get mowed down while he's stuck in the animation, and he can't disengage. He drops explosive cask. Aframu's already dead. X-Smithy's down to 10%. X-Smithy dies. Stixay's down to 40%. TSM just pushes up on mid after this and gets the free outer turret, and it opens up the map and gives TSM control to now freely move around the map as they please. Now this next clip is pretty important to highlight, actually, because even though TSM makes the proper decision here to... Because they originally... Alright, so originally TSM did not get control over River. CLG set themselves up in River right now to be able to pressure onto this dragon. It's important to notice where Taliyah is, because she's sitting in the river. At any point from when I started playing this clip to right now, she needs to use Weaver Wall. She has rank 2 Weaver's Wall. There's zero reason for TSM to be able to take away anything from this. This is a 100% map positional advantage win for CLG. And what happens is they throw it away. TSM walks mid because they cannot enter into River versus this team composition from CLG, otherwise face risk getting picked. So TSM pressures up onto the mid lane because they want to threaten the tier 2. CLG's afraid of losing tier 2 and then not being able to re-enter into the lane, so they have to now peel off of Dragon. And since they have to peel off of Dragon, they have to go through a choke. And once TSM peels back from the lane, back into River now, because CLG has walked out, there's no way for CLG to come back into River because they have to re-enter through a choke versus a Gangplank Cassiopeia. That's not going to happen. So by default, CLG has now sacrificed the second Mountain Dragon of the game over to TSM, and this really solidifies TSM's ability to win this game when it could have all been stopped by one Weaver's Wall. Set up in the river, you could have cut off the lane, preventing TSM from actually moving forward to posture onto that tier 2. You would have secured yourself a route into getting back into that lane without TSM contesting you, and you would have secured the dragon. What are you doing, CLG? But of course, we don't do that here in North America. We say, TSM, you want something? Alright, we'll let you have it. Anyways. Alright, so this is something I just wanted to briefly touch on, because there's this conception that having standard lanes right now means that the team with the strongest lane per lane matchup auto wins games, since it's a quote-unquote, air quotes, standard lane meta. That's not really, if lanes were to play out the entirety in lane phase, then I could probably agree with you in that scenario, but that's not how the game works. There's a multitude of phases, there's a multitude of situations, and varying compositions that can change the performance of the game or the gameplay overall. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this particular draft is because this draft highlights just that. TSM gets from first glance, what you would suspect to be an extremely strong draft. They got very powerful individual lane matchups. They got a powerful on the current patch. They got a powerful Echo pick onto Svenskeren. They got a powerful Vladimir pick onto Bjergsen. They get the Jhin. They get Tom Kench, and they get Gragas for a little bit of disengage. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, Reksai ends up going over to C9. That's fine. But the important thing, well, it's not fine because Reksai is super debated in this match, but regardless, the reason why this doesn't work out so well is because the built-in synergies in comparison when talking about C9's composition and the built-in synergies in regards to TSM's composition. So, if we were to talk about that, let's take a moment. In reality, TSM now have 4 AP damage dealers, and their only AD source is the form of Jhin. This is bad. They have... The reason why this is bad is because C9 theoretically has 3 tanks, and they denied any possibility of being able to answer the Shen by drafting the Trundle with the Shen. You removed the ability to disable tanks when you deny that Trundle pick. And that's an extremely important takeaway here, because this means that Shen gets to be as beefy as he wants, do whatever he wants, and the Trundle, I mean, okay, you lose out on the flex pick, but it's more about securing that safety for the Shen and knowing that you're never going to have an issue with him not being able to serve his purpose. What this also means is, hey, you later get these double hyper carries in the form of Ashe and Cassiopeia who can later come on to be really, really high DPSers in the late game. And then you have the Shen ult to drop down on top of them. And once they get a little bit of MR or just one MR item on top of the locket bonus, it's going to mean that trying to get through that shield when you're trying to burn those hyper carries, TSM have no CC. They have 4 magic dealers. It's going to be extremely hard for them to try to burn down Sneaky or Smoothie because they have no way to just sit on top of them and lock them down. So this was a really good instance of how, even though it's a standard lane meta, and even though TSM did, at first glance, get the strong lane matchups that they would want for the standard lane meta, how it didn't fit in a compositional sense, it didn't fit in in built-in synergies within the composition itself. There was no give and takes in the form of benefits from each other, whereas C9 did, and they end up being able to punish this game really hard because of it. This is a good team fight to highlight, because, okay, so we move into the game, and TSM are actually the first people to force this fight. Now, the reason why this is a good example or a good team fight to highlight, because this is one of the first instances where C9 answers. You have a team creating opposition to TSM. Instead of just rolling over and deciding, hey, we're gonna maybe trade something on the map, or hey, you know, you got there before us, we're just gonna give this to you. C9 pull Jensen down from mid lane to come defend the tower. The reason why this ends up working is because of Jensen actually coming down, because he forces them off the tower, he chunks them out, he prevents them from engaging, they all burn a lot of summoner spells, they all get chunked out low, and since nobody dies from C9 here, they actually get to, and Sneaky had died earlier, they actually get to defend this tower because they have a Reksai. Reksai ults back to the lane, Ashe gets there, she gets to defend the lane, TSM is now low on resources, they need to be able to come back and contest the dragon, but instead, this team fight plays out. I believe C9 ends up taking the first brick gold off the towers, actually, because when they get back to lane, they get to push down that outer turret in bot lane because TSM were unable to answer since they had the back. And they might actually get the dragon as well. Here, let me... Alright. So yeah. Super good. Good stuff by C9. And that was a... I'm just like sitting here, oh yeah man, that was so great. No, but that's good because the team actually reacted and decided to trade pressure or answer to TSM's map movements. And they said, okay, well, you're going to fight us down in bot lane. We're going to answer you with the Shen ult. We're going to rotate our mid lane down to prevent you from taking this tower. And once that happened, TSM kind of was like, whoa, wait, they're contesting us. What do we do? They hesitate to pull the trigger on anything, and instead you have this ins and outs of individual players jumping in, jumping out, getting chunked out one at a time, and they never really get anything off of that tower dive or that tower push. Now, this is a later fight after C9 ended up getting that Earth Drake and that bot tower, and I wanted to highlight this in particular because Doublelift decides, he was sitting on Dirk and Ghostblade, and he decides to back to complete the Duskblade. Now I understand the power spike that he's going to get from getting this Duskblade, but the issue being is the recall timer is actually really poorly made, or the decision to recall. So his recall timers this game was really poor, just off of this one decision, because what happens is you're giving priority and man pressure over to C9 when there's an Infernal Drake on the field. It wouldn't be so bad if C9 didn't benefit that much from it, but they have a Cassiopeia and an Ashe. You're really going to give a free Infernal Drake over to C9 when they have double hyper carries like that and a Shen to back them up? Bad idea. Anyways, so Doublelift makes that decision to recall and go get his Duskblade. He goes to get the Duskblade. C9 actually doesn't know that he recalled, but this points to another instance of somebody actually pulling the trigger. And you have a team deciding, you know what, we're just going to fight for this because we feel like we're stronger right now, and even if they 5v5 us, we'll take the fight to them. So C9 pulled the trigger, they go for the fight, and instead there was no fight, because they didn't have Doublelift yet, and they just pick up a free Infernal Dragon instead. And then you have this back and forth here from C9 and TSM, and nobody really pulling the trigger. All the fight is based off of, and this is good for C9 in this case, because C9 wants to be able to just sit here and kite back and forth and then play around the pillar and the taunts to be able to slowly chunk people out. Because as soon as TSM gets low, then the Cassiopeia kicks in, then the Ashe kicks in, then the pillars start kicking in, because you get to kite them down and chase them back to their towers. The problem with TSN's composition here is that they have no reliable lockdown for this double immobile carry composition, and that means that C9 just gets to do whatever they want in these fights unless they sit on top of them or get positioned extremely poorly and get displaced by explosive cask, which doesn't happen. So every time C9 decides, hey, we're going to pull the trigger, TSM can't answer it. This is a really important, this next fight that I'm cutting to. This is 26 minutes. This is the game decider for me. This particular fight was what put the nail in the coffin for my, not only this game, but my belief that TSM is going to struggle versus smarter teams, versus teams with more experience that understand top level macro play, that understand win conditions, that understand how to trade map pressure. It's this particular instance that wins me over on this argument, and I'll play out the clip and explain why. Alright, so we've already highlighted that TSM has practically 0 CC with this comp, and no way to sit on top of people. First thing, Doublelift has a really bad ultimate here. It covers the entire lane. To his benefit, he may have thought Cassio was going to run down through lane, and he wanted to stop that from happening because he had his team collapsing. But even in this scenario, then you would want your ultimate to cover the Wraith area up into the river entrance down by up in Baron behind red. So this is already a bad ult by Doublelift. He does get off every single bullet, but warranted most of these hit smoothie. Now you have Bjergsen flanking onto the back to get on top of Jensen, but the issue I want to highlight here is that TSM has one chance. They have a shotgun, they have their ultis, and it's a very narrow window in which they can succeed with this composition. And given the situation they're in, Shen's bottom right now, they saw Ashe so topside, so they want to go on this so hard. But once Shen ults, you want to get the fuck out. So right here, Svenskaren gets the body slam flash. And this is unfortunate because Smoothie's pillar actually interrupts the ability for Jensen to get knocked back. But it doesn't matter because even if TSM wanted to follow up on this, there's not really much they can do because Doublelift is still way back here, not able to auto attack, not able to DPS, not able to use his Q or his W because he's in his ult, he's out of range to be able to participate in this fight, and the Shen ult's coming down on Jensen already. So soon as this Shen ult comes down, TSM should be like, alright guys, we're out. This fight's over, we got what we wanted, we got the Shen ult. They have no more safety net for Jensen or Sneaky. So now we need to play around the Shen ult being down. But instead, they go so hard. And this is really bad for TSM because if you commit to this fight, the other reason why this fight goes so bad is because Doublelift's not even close to this. He doesn't get a DPS for the entirety of this fight, which means that all the while his tanks are just getting mowed down, and there's no repercussions. There's no return damage onto C9. They had that window, and once that Shen ult came down onto Jensen, TSM needed to get out and reset the fight to be able to benefit from it. Instead, they end up getting chased down. And then you just have here Ashe, full confidence because everyone's so low. You have 4 people there behind you. They just get to sit here, chase them down. Doublelift's now up into the mid-river range. Actually able to get an auto attack off there. Hit Meteos pretty hard. If he would have actually been able to DPS that fight, the fight may have gone differently. But it still doesn't detract from the point that once you got that Shen ult, you needed to back out. Alright. This is another instance where TSM gets away with robbery. Like, this is robbery. This is like stealing candy from a baby. Okay, we're actually just going to pause it because I'm going to explain what happened. Reksai was clearing a ward in river, right? You saw Reksai in river. He originally scouted red, I believe, while Meteos was doing it. And then Meteos goes to do Krugs. They see TSM's bot lane move up into Fog of War into river after Reksai just cleared the ward in the river. You see Cassio now move off of the map going into Fog of War, potentially. Everything should be screaming at you, they're going to go to Infernal Dragon. This is a scenario where you're handing over an Infernal Dragon to a team composition with Cassiopeia and a Jhin. So, this is just really poor because Meteos ends up completing his... Oh, holy shit. Meteos ends up completing his back just to get an Ether Wisp, so he backed to upgrade and boots and refresh his wards. So, but it's irrelevant because he can still scout vision. He can still prevent them from moving for this dragon. Instead, TSM get a 8-minute and 52-second 8 minute and 50-second Infernal Dragon on a team composition where they already have the security of Cassiopeia being ahead, and they have a Jhin that they know for a fact is going to scale. This game's done now. Alright. Next instance. This is a particular situation that I feel like C9 actually really failed to capitalize on. So, originally this started with Impact being in top, and then Jensen coming top to cut off Haunser, who was running down through river by Herald. And Haunser ended up getting out really, really low. And Bjergsen came to try to save him, but Bjergsen just had to flash over red because he also ended up getting really, really low. At this point in the game, it's practically tied. It's 2-4. I mean, they can't see this. But what you do know is that Vlad is 3-0. And you just chunked him out. He had to flash out. You know Shen is backing. You know their mid laner with 3 kills is going to have to back because he's so low. From that instance where Vlad flashes over, and C9 even pings it. This is the most interesting part. C9 even pings Infernal Dragon. So they know they want to move down to it. But it's the hesitation from the team that prevents this from actually occurring. So they do race. Meteos goes up here. He's scouts. I don't know what he's doing. They sit around in mid. They want to push out mid to get mid priority. But in this case, you don't need mid priority. The reason they don't need mid priority in this case is because Bjergsen based. You know he had to base. Haunser's in base. Okay, at worst it's going to be a 4v5 and you're going to get Shen ult. In which case, if you just start the dragon and get the Shen ult, you can back out and contest without there being the Shen shield. But you know Bjergsen's not there. You know he's not there. So for this time, C9 pushes mid, gets mid control priority, which isn't needed in the first place. Now they start moving down the dragon, in which case they realize, alright, Svenskerin's doing Scuttle Crab because Sven moved ahead down into mid lane, or down into river to get Scuttle while they were pushing mid. And now TSM has control over river, and in which case C9's like, oh, well, you know, we can't get him fertile anymore. And that's that. C9 has no way to now check into this. And it's the reason why this bothered me so much. This ends up going out into a crazy fight. It's just those seconds, those 20 seconds or so that they spent moving from the wraiths into mid, down into river. If they had moved directly just right away down into dragon, that would have been it. And top level teams, or teams that understand how to pull the trigger, teams that know how to get on that go button, press the gas pedal, just you get that window, you get that opportunity, and you just go on it. I really feel like TSM struggles, and they've shown to really not be able to answer those situations where teams finally say, you know what, alright, we're going to press the go button. And there's already been instances in the playoffs where I've shown now where it's like, alright, when a team decides, hey, we're going to, you know, pull the trigger, we're going to say, hey, we're going to fight you here, we're going to go at it. TSM kind of is inconsistent or unreliable in the way they handle the situation. They're not decisive. And this holds them back because they're waiting for that opportunity. But if the team's already willing to just pull the trigger, you're not going to get that opportunity. And TSM relies on that too much. And it's not their fault. It's something that's developed through the region that actually holds TSM back because of the lack of experience versus that type of playstyle, versus those teams with that kind of mentality or understanding of when they have the opportunities. Now, this is the last part I just wanted to cover. Small video. My throat's dry. This is the last one. The biggest part about this one is that C9 has the ability with this composition. Alright, it was a little blurry at first. C9 has opportunity with this composition. They were paced up in mid. You have the perfect chance with Baron buff and a Taliyah and a Reksai to 1-3-1. This is your chance to eliminate any threat of a 1-4 on you and the abuse of Shen versus your composition. You have every opportunity right now to say we're going to win this game. In my opinion, you send Reksai bottom, you send Reksai top, you send Nar bot, and whoever matches up, then you have your control mage in mid in the form of Taliyah, you have your Jhin and your Braum. There's no way with TSM's composition, because on multiple occasions, throughout even the regular season, TSM oftentimes runs a lot of low CC comps. And in playoffs particularly, they ran almost in every instance I showed, there was unreliable forms of CC. This is probably the only situation where TSM has a hard CC in the form of Shen throughout the playoffs. And I don't count parallel convergence because it's really unreliable. But there's no way TSM could engage onto C9 in this situation if they pull a 1-3-1. And the most beneficial part is you have, once that Nar TP comes online, you have double TP in the form of Reksai and Nar. And the nicest part about C9's comp is when you do the 1-3-1, and you have Jhin and Taliyah in the mid lane, the Jhin ult range and the Taliyah ult range, more specifically guided at the Taliyah ult, you can deny any interference with whoever's matching your 3 in mid to the side lanes in the case they start winning, which you know is going to happen by default because the minions are going to be overwhelming. So if Impact starts getting that lead over Haunter and they have to send somebody down to help, you can Weaver wall that answer and then just keep sieging mid, or keep having that bot lane keep pressuring, or on either side, and you can always move Taliyah out of that lane over to the other lane to be able to help answer that. Same for Sneaky, he can always back off a little bit and prevent that rotation with his ult. This is a really unique opportunity for C9 to actually utilize the strength of their composition and the uniqueness of their characters, especially Taliyah in the form of terrain creation, a specific aspect of the game that I think is really intriguing, to actually be able to create map advantages. And they didn't do that. And when I look at Korean teams, when I look at EU teams, when I look at Chinese teams, and in few cases LMS, I think LMS has some unique vision opportunities, I feel like TSM's really going to struggle because these are situations versus teams that are going to not be afraid to pull that trigger. They're not going to be afraid to press go. If you give them an opportunity to capitalize on your decisions, or you give them an opening to trade pressure or answer you, if your execution is not pristine, you're going to pay for it. And I know they're going to pay for it because the way TSM handled throughout the series, even in situations like C9, C9's responses to their decisions, it's already shaky. And I feel like since they've been handed so many situations throughout the entirety of the split and throughout playoffs, they've been given so many handouts, this is going to impair TSM going forward into internationals. And it's unfortunate because I feel like if the game played out in its entirety through lane phase, I'm like making excuses, but they would do well. And it's not to their expense. Maybe through this Korean boot camp and their scrims, they're going to pick up on this. They're going to get better through their macro game. They're going to get better in their map rotations. They're going to get better in their map pressure. They're going to get better in answering globals and understanding wave manipulation and choke advantages or choke control. But as it stands right now, it's an unfortunate truth that TSM is held back by what their region was unable to offer them in the forms of contention. If you like this video, follow me on Twitter, leave a like. I don't do content much, I try to. When I do content, I like to make it on subjects that I think will be relevant in the coming future. You should check out my audio content on SoundCloud. I'll leave the link in the description below. Thanks for watching. See ya.